Hello, my name is Reverend Dr. May Elise Cannon. This is the video for Saturday, October 25th, 2025, 750 days since October 7th of 2023. This is mostly a news update today, and there's lots of news happening. We're holding on to the hope that the ceasefire might hold, but that it would become a comprehensive permanent ceasefire, that it would become an end to ethnic cleansing, an end to displacement, an end to what the vast majority of experts around the world are saying is genocide. And the steps towards that, in terms of the current ceasefire agreement, we're in the middle of this 20-point plan. One of the components of that plan is the Gaza Stabilization Force. U.S. President Donald Trump met with Qatar's Emir and Prime Minister on Air Force One during a refuel stop in Qatar and said that the Gaza Stabilization Force should be ready, quote, soon, end quote, and that Qatar would send peacekeeping troops to Gaza if needed. The issue is there's no agreement yet with Israel and the United States and the Arab states, which includes also Turkey and there are even South Asian countries. There's no agreement about who will provide the stabilization force. There's also not, as of yet, been movement in terms of a UN Security Council resolution, which for many of the European countries who might send a presence and have a presence in Gaza, they need to have a UN vote to that effect. Now, Turkey is likely to be excluded from that group because Israel objects. That was just announced today on Saturday. And so I want to talk about that for a minute. The role of the stabilization force will be tasked with disarming Hamas. This is the demilitarization of Gaza, and also in securing a transitional Palestinian government. So that formation, again, is a question, but the purpose of it is pretty clear: to secure a transitional government and to disarm Hamas and other military factions in Gaza. Now, Netanyahu on Saturday ruled out Palestinian Authority involvement in post-war Gaza, although Friday, the main Palestinian factions did agree to allow an independent committee of technocrats to take over the ruling of the Gaza Strip. So the real question is, Turkey, what might their role be? They will probably be excluded. The stabilization force is believed to be, or planned to be, about 5,000 troops large. It will be set up in Gaza after Israel has made clear that they do not want the Turkish troops to take part. A lot of this came out during Marco Rubio's visit. The U.S. Secretary of State's been in Israel, and he said it was a requirement that Israel be comfortable with the nationality of the multinational force, set up to prevent a security vacuum when the massive task of the reconstruction of Gaza begins. Turkey has said that they're willing to send troops, but Israel has let it be known that it disapproves of that possibility. We've been talking about this in the past as well. One of the challenges is, if this 5,000, member stabilization force, if this is made up of different countries in Gaza, it would prevent Israel from being able to bomb Gaza if something happens that they don't like. And that's been what's happening, over the last 750 days. So why is Turkey a problem for Israel? Tensions between Israel and Turkey have grown over particularly Syria, and also Erdogan, the president of Turkey, is seen by the Israeli government as being too close to the Muslim Brotherhood and also to Hamas itself. The exclusion of Turkey from the stabilization force will be controversial, since it's one of the guarantors of the 20-point peace plan. And it does seem to be one of the most capable Muslim armed forces. So says The Guardian. The stabilization force is most likely to be led by Egypt. Now, factions have agreed, as I just mentioned, to governance by technocrats. So these are the main Palestinian factions in Gaza. They say they agreed to an independent committee that could take over the running of Gaza after Hamas has received, quote, clear guarantees, end quote, from mediators that, again, quote, the war has effectively ended. A joint statement that was published on the Hamas website said that the groups have agreed in a meeting in Cairo to hand over the administration of the Strip to a temporary Palestinian committee composed of independent technocrats, which could manage the affairs of life and basic services in cooperation with Arab brothers and international institutions. The statement also called for a meeting to agree on a national strategy and to revitalize the Palestinian Liberation Organization, the PLO, as the sole legitimate representative of the Palestinian Palestinian people. Hamas is not currently a part of the PLO, which is dominated by its longtime rival, Fatah. Fatah is the political party of the current president of Palestine, Mahmoud Abbas. There also is a huge question, and I've been talking about this a little bit in past days. The future of Marwan Barghouti is in question. President Trump is weighing whether or not he should be released. This comes after Marwan's wife appealed to President Trump to intervene for her husband's release from an Israeli jail, and the U.S. president said he would make a decision on the matter. In a letter addressed to Trump, Fadwa Barghouti, whom Turkish Middle East Peace has met with previously, her husband is serving multiple life sentences since 2022 for deadly attacks on Israelis, but is seen by many Palestinians as a potential leader who could unite their national movement. And they have urged President Trump for his discharge. I should also note there are more than 100 and some countries around the world that have called for Marwan Barghouti's release, in large part because it was believed his trial was not it was a farce, that his trial was not adequate in terms of the execution of justice. You'll recall the update I gave last week about Marwan Barghouti, and it was his son, Arab Barghouti, who said his father had been assaulted and beaten unconscious by 8 guards on the 14th of September as he was being transferred from Gano and Megiddo prisons. On other issues related to Gaza, humanitarian assistance is still at terribly low levels. The World Health Organization said Thursday there's been little improvement with the amount of aid going into Gaza, and there's no observable reduction in hunger. You'll recall that only 15% of the promised humanitarian assistance from the 20-point plan as of mid-last week was being allowed into Gaza. The WHO chief, Tedros Ghebreyesus, said that the situation still remains catastrophic because what is entering is not enough. A few other updates related to Gaza. Israeli Defense Minister Katz said 60% of Hamas terror tunnels, that's a direct quote, still remain in the Gaza Strip. It's worth noting that many of those tunnels were actually built by Israel when it had control of the Sinai and the Gaza Strip, prior to its return of the Sinai to Egypt during the peace agreement. The IDF has said that it carried out targeted strikes in central Gaza Strip on a terrorist from Islamic Jihad. That is also a direct quote. So there were strikes carried out in Gaza. They said that the attack was because they were trying to prevent a planned attack on Israeli soldiers. In the last 48 hours, 19 Palestinians have been killed and 7 wounded in the Gaza Strip. According to Hamas, 4 of the dead were killed by Israeli army fire. In the occupied West Bank, there has been another rampage by extremist settlers. Israeli settlers set vehicles on fire near the village of Al-Makhir, a Palestinian village in the central West Bank. Over 20 masked settlers attacked Palestinians and human rights activists in the Bedouin community of Mukhmas, southeast of Ramallah in the occupied West Bank. And the Egyptians have said that a team will assist Hamas in the Gaza Strip. Sorry, this is a Gaza-related update, to evacuate the local bodies of hostages. Meanwhile, in Israel, bringing back the slain hostages, the bodies of those that remain, will save lives. Tens of thousands rallied across Israel throughout Saturday night for the return of bodies of the 13 hostages that still remain in the Gaza Strip. Hundreds of Israelis protested in front of 2 prisons in central Israel, where 4 hostage deal activists, these are Israeli activists, have been detained because they are calling for the return of bodies and because of their methods. They were charged of, their charges are of arson near Prime Minister Netanyahu's residence in September. The Prime Minister's office also has reported that Netanyahu and Rubio, our Secretary of State, committed to advancing the return of the deceased hostages, disarming Hamas, and demilitarizing Gaza. Prime Minister Netanyahu's office said he spoke with the U.S. Secretary of State Rubio. According to the statement, the two concluded that Rubio's visit to Israel last week reaffirmed the deep, enduring partnership between Israel and the U.S., stating that both are committed to close cooperation to advance the common interests and values of the U.S. and Israel. First, the return of the remaining deceased hostages and the disarming of Hamas and the demilitarization of Gaza. Meanwhile, the U.S. has begun in recent days monitoring ground activity in Gaza using drones to ensure that the U.S.-backed ceasefire deal is upheld, so said the New York Times, citing Israeli and U.S. officials. So that's the update for day 750, Saturday, October 25th. May God go before us towards comprehensive and permanent peace. In the name of Christ, amen.